I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are a nurse working in London, or, maybe a software engineer living in Toronto.
Right, so you're living thousands of miles away from home.
Exactly. You were born in Uganda, you still have family there, and you send money home like every single month to help with school fees or whatever. You care deeply about the future of your home country.
Yeah, that's a very common reality for a lot of people in the diaspora.
Right. So one evening, you're just scrolling on your phone and you sign an online petition asking for more transparency in how local government funds are spent. Just a simple, seemingly harmless action.
I mean, people do that every day.
They do. But then you read the news and discover that clicking that specific link could theoretically land you a 20-year prison sentence.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like some kind of thought experiment about authoritarian overreach, right?
Yeah, it really does.
The idea that a digital signature or, I don't know, a bank transfer made across the globe could trigger a decade-long prison term. Right. But we aren't talking about a hypothetical scenario today. We are looking at real, proposed legal architecture.
And that is exactly the mission of today's deep dive. We are unpacking a highly alarming new article published just 2 days ago on March 31st, 2026.
Right, the one by Dr. Daniel Kawuma.
Yes, exactly. It's titled The Sovereignty Bill, A Shadow Over Ugandan Democracy. And just to set the stage for you, the listener, the core tension of this source material revolves around Uganda's proposed Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2025.
Which is a massive piece of legislation.
It is. And I want to be incredibly clear right up front. Our goal today is to impartially analyze Dr. Kawuma's framework. We are not here to take a political side or endorse his specific viewpoint.
Right. We're just laying out the arguments he presents.
Exactly. We want to understand how a law, which is ostensibly designed to protect a nation's interests, could drastically alter the lives of everyday Ugandans, both inside the country and abroad.
And setting aside the specific geography for a moment, this source is crucial for you as a listener because it really maps out the mechanics of a global phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely.
Because according to Kawuma's analysis, this bill is like a masterclass in how legal language can be engineered to function as a tool for control.
Yeah.
It gives us a window into how governments can draft legislation that looks protective on the surface, but actually operates as a wide net to catch, political dissent.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can look at who this bill is supposedly targeting, we need to understand how the bill actually functions on a mechanical level.
Right, the actual text of it.
Yeah. Dr. Kawuma points out that the language in this sovereignty bill is incredibly broad. We're talking about offenses categorized under undefined terms like promoting foreign interests or economic sabotage or even influencing elections.
Which are huge, sweeping categories.
Right. And as I was reading this, I couldn't help but think it's like a referee in a sports match who refuses to define what a foul actually is until after they've decided they want to penalize a specific player.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
It makes the rules of the game entirely dependent on whoever happens to be holding the whistle,
Yeah, and to extend that analogy, the whistle only ever seems to blow on the visiting team. What's fascinating here is how that ambiguity isn't a bug in the drafting process.
Oh, it's intentional.
According to Dr. Kawuma, it is the core feature. He refers to this as political discretion.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Well, in a healthy legal system, laws are designed with precision. You want citizens to know exactly where the line is so they don't cross it.
Right, that makes sense.
But when you introduce a term like promoting foreign interests, without strictly defining what constitutes a foreign interest or like what promoting it actually looks like, you aren't creating a legal standard. You are creating a trap.
But how does that play out in reality? Like, if I write an editorial criticizing a public policy and a foreign newspaper happens to quote my article, am I suddenly promoting a foreign interest?
Under a strict, literal reading of this proposed bill, you very well could be. I mean, the danger isn't just in the text itself. It's in the environment that vague text creates.
Because it's so subjective.
Exactly. Enforcement stops relying on objective judicial measures and starts relying on the whims of politicians or prosecutors.
Yeah.
They can selectively apply the law whenever it suits their strategic needs.
Stretching the definition to fit the target, basically.
Yeah, rather than judging the target against a fixed legal definition.
Which is wild. And the text mentions that Ugandans are already familiar with this kind of legal strategy. It brings up the Public Order Management Act and the Computer Misuse Act as historical precedents.
Yes, and that historical context is really vital to Dr. Kawuma's argument. He notes that those previous laws were also justified as necessary security measures.
But the reality on the ground was different.
Very different. Look at how they were actually applied mechanically. The Computer Misuse Act, for example, contained provisions against annoying or harassing individuals online.
Annoying. That is so incredibly subjective.
Right. In practice, that meant ordinary citizens or journalists who posted memes or just legitimate criticisms of government officials could be arrested. Meanwhile, supporters of the ruling party could basically say whatever they wanted.
Wow. So it was entirely one-sided.
The author's thesis is that the Sovereignty Bill is simply the latest, much more severe iteration of that exact same pattern.
Okay, so if the rules are that elastic, we naturally have to look at who is most likely to get caught in them. And the source explicitly points to the Ugandan diaspora.
Right, the communities living abroad.
Exactly. These are Ugandans who historically have been a massive lifeline for the country. The text notes they contribute heavily through remittances, investments, and advocacy.
They're highly engaged.
They are. But recently, they've also been raising concerns about governance and human rights from the safety of their new home countries.
Well, distance usually affords a certain level of protection. I mean, a citizen can speak out against corruption much more freely if they're sitting in an apartment in Chicago than if they're living in Kampala.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Under this proposed bill, those activities, like petitioning international partners for accountability or supporting opposition groups like the National Unity Platform, could suddenly be reclassified.
Reclassified as criminal conduct.
Yes. The text says they could be prosecuted as interfering in Uganda's affairs, and the penalties outlined are staggering. Up to 20 years in prison, or massive fines of up to 2 billion Ugandan shillings.
To put that financial penalty into perspective, 2 billion Ugandan shillings is roughly $500,000 US.
Wait, really? $500,000?
Yes. It is an astronomical sum. It isn't just a slap on the wrist. It is a penalty designed to inflict total generational financial ruin on an individual and their family.
But I'm stuck on the logistics of this. How does a country actually enforce a law like that on someone who lives halfway across the globe?
That's the big question.
Right. Like, if a diaspora member in London tweets something critical of the ruling party, is the Ugandan government genuinely going to petition the UK to extradite them for promoting foreign interests? The physical mechanics just seem completely unworkable.
Physically executing mass extraditions over social media posts is unworkable, yes. But Dr. Kawuma argues that actual physical enforcement isn't the primary objective here.
So what is?
The goal is lawfare. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sheer severity of a 20-year sentence or a $500,000 fine is meant to be a psychological weapon. It creates a chilling effect.
Oh, I see. Meaning they don't actually need to arrest you in London. They just need you to believe they could arrest you if you ever try to go home.
Precisely. Imagine you are that software engineer in Toronto. You want to visit your aging parents back in Uganda, or maybe you have a local business you were trying to fund in your hometown.
Yeah.
If you know that simply signing a petition or attending a town hall meeting in Canada could theoretically result in you being detained the second your passport is scanned at the airport in Entebbe, what do?
You probably just keep your head down. I mean, you don't sign the petition. You don't send the tweet.
You self-censor.
Yeah.
And that is how the bill successfully turns historically positive democratic activities like diasporic advocacy for human rights into a source of deep personal anxiety.
That's wild. So it's intimidation by design.
Exactly. The author's pointing out that this legislation effectively exports fear. It attempts to sever the collaborative tie between Ugandans living abroad and the political reality of their homeland.
Basically isolating the domestic population from their loudest external advocates.
Yes.
But that fear isn't just being exported, it is heavily concentrated right at home, too. The source makes it clear that this bill specifically targets the lifelines of local civil society organizations, or CSOs.
Right, the groups on the ground.
Yeah, these are the groups delivering essential services. They provide health care, they advocate for vulnerable communities, they track human rights abuses.
And they usually operate in an environment that is already financially constrained.
Exactly. So many of them rely heavily on external foreign funding just to pay their staff and keep the lights on.
Which, by the way, is standard practice globally. Civil society often requires international grants to maintain operational independence from the very governments they're attempting to hold accountable.
But this bill casts a massive blanket of suspicion over any foreign funding. And the part that really stopped me in my tracks was the specific inclusion of economic sabotage. as a criminal offense.
Yeah, that's a highly loaded term.
It really is.
Yeah.
Usually when we hear the phrase economic sabotage, we think of physical destruction, right? Like someone blowing up a bridge or a massive counterfeiting ring.
Right. Actual sabotage of infrastructure or currency.
But here, the source explicitly says this clause could be used to target local activists who are simply exposing the misuse of public funds or demanding transparency from international donors. How does asking for transparency equate to sabotaging an economy?
It's a fascinating inversion of logic, isn't it? Let's break down Dr. Kouma's argument for why that is so dangerous.
Yeah, please do.
In a functioning democracy, asking where the tax money went or questioning how a public resource is being managed is a fundamental civic duty. It is the very mechanism that protects the economy from corruption.
Exactly. Accountability is supposed to be a good thing.
But by labeling that exact scrutiny as economic sabotage, the proposed law frames the activist, not the corrupt official, as the threat to the nation's financial health.
So the logic is, if you expose that a public infrastructure project's funds were stolen, you might cause foreign donors to pull their funding, and therefore you are the one who sabotaged the economy.
That is the exact mechanism of the trap. And to understand the mechanical impact on these civil society organizations, we have to look at the asset forfeiture provision mentioned in the text.
Oh, right, the asset seizures.
Under this broad language, a prosecutor doesn't necessarily need to prove a crime in a lengthy public trial first. If an organization is merely accused of foreign interference or economic sabotage, the authorities can freeze their bank accounts and seize their assets immediately.
Wait, without a trial, which means the organization is just dead in the water.
Immediately.
Even if they fight it in court and win 3 years later, they haven't been able to pay their local doctors or educators for 3 years. The work completely stops.
Exactly. The mere threat of that outcome forces organization directors into an impossible position.
They can't risk it.
No. The fear of asset forfeiture will inevitably force these groups to scale back their critical programs. They will stop investigating. They will stop publishing reports.
And what does the author say the ultimate result of that is?
Dr. Kouma concludes that the result isn't a stronger, more secure Uganda. The result is a weaker one, with significantly fewer voices left to speak up on behalf of everyday citizens who rely on those services.
But wait, I'm stuck on a really glaring issue here. Uganda has a constitution, right?
Yes, of course.
You can't just pass a law that freezes a charity's bank accounts for investigating the government if freedom of speech is a guaranteed right. How does a bill like this not just get immediately thrown out in court?
So what does this all mean? That constitutional collision is actually a major focus of Dr. Kouma's analysis.
Okay, so he addresses this directly.
He does. He isn't just throwing around vague complaints about unfairness. He maps the proposed bill directly against specific foundational guarantees within Uganda's own constitution.
Basically arguing that they are in direct mechanical conflict.
Right.
And the source lays it out very clearly. It points to Article 29, which guarantees freedom of expression. The author says if you criminalize a citizen's speech simply because it is perceived to align with foreign interests, you are actively suppressing open debate.
Yes, and he also points to freedom of association, which is, again, under Article 29.
Oh, right. Restricting a local community group from collaborating with international partners directly threatens their right to freely associate.
Exactly. And he goes further, citing Article 38, which covers political participation. If you penalize citizens for, quote-unquote, influencing elections, which again is a term the bill leaves dangerously undefined, you are risking limiting their basic right to be involved in the democratic process.
Because advocating for a specific candidate or policy is, by definition, an attempt to influence an election.
Exactly. And finally, he brings up Article 26, the right to property.
Right, tying back to the asset seizures.
Yes, allowing the government to forfeit or seize an organization's assets based on vague accusations raises massive red flags about protecting citizens from the arbitrary deprivation of their property.
So the author makes a crucial point. These are not minor legislative typos or administrative overlaps. These are fundamental contradictions that strike at the very heart of constitutional governance.
They really are. However, to address your earlier point about why this doesn't just get thrown out in court, the chilling effect often works faster than the judicial system.
Oh, I see.
By the time a constitutional challenge works its way up to a Supreme Court, the activist has already spent years in jail, or the civil society organization has already gone bankrupt. The punishment is the process itself.
Wow, so what does this all mean? we have a proposed bill filled with incredibly vague language, imposing massive penalties on the diaspora, threatening the assets of local charities, and seemingly flying directly in the face of the nation's own constitutional guarantees. Where does this leave the country?
Well, carefully and impartially reporting Dr. Kawuma's own political conclusion, this raises an important question about the true motivation behind the legislation.
Okay.
Dr. Kawuma frames this entire legislative push not as the foundation of a confident, secure democracy, but rather as a message of fear from what he terms a desperate 40-year regime.
Referring to the long tenure of the current ruling party.
Yes. He lays out a very clear thesis regarding statecraft. A truly strong nation does not fear criticism. A strong nation engages with its critics, learns from the friction, and actually grows stronger as a result.
Which makes sense.
His argument is that when a government resorts to using the law itself to silence dissent, they might achieve a sense of short-term control. They might successfully quiet the opposition for the next election cycle.
But at what cost?
Exactly. He argues they are purchasing that short-term control at the devastating cost of long-term stability and public trust.
Because when a government tells its citizens, as the source so chillingly summarizes, to speak carefully, associate cautiously, and engage at your own risk, they aren't building genuine loyalty.
No.
They are just building quiet resentment. And that perfectly summarizes the core debate highlighted by Dr. Kawuma's article. He argues that this issue shouldn't be reduced to a simple binary talking point of patriotism versus foreign influence.
It's much more complex than that.
It is a much deeper, much more profound question about what kind of country Uganda wants to be. Can a nation protect its borders and its political system without entirely crushing the space for dialogue, transparency, and accountability?
It is the ultimate balancing act of statehood. Can you safeguard national interests without treating your own citizens' civic engagement as a national security threat?
Bringing this all back to you, the listener, the mechanics we've unpacked today, the weaponization of vague terminology, the psychological chilling effect of disproportionate penalties, the reframing of transparency as economic sabotage, and the bypassing of constitutional rights through rapid asset forfeiture. These are not isolated tactics.
No, they're seen all over the world.
Exactly. Whenever you see a government anywhere in the world rushing to pass sweeping new laws in the name of national security or protecting sovereignty, it is a signal for you to look very, very closely at the fine print. You have to ask yourself whose rights are actually being traded away in exchange for this supposed security.
I think that leaves us with a final, rather provocative thought to mull over. We've talked a lot